So we got a really disturbing, messed up story that just happened a couple days ago. Not all the pieces of the puzzle were there, I guess, to make a solid case. So he got kind of a light sentence for what could have been way stricter sentence. But a Humboldt Park man, they said, who was accused of trying to kill a homeless woman that he invited to stay in his home, has been sentenced to only 4 years. Now, this is for what could have been attempted murder. That could have been the charge. And the weapon that he used was a machete. So during an initial bail hearing for this guy, whose name was Joseph Crispino, prosecutors said that he invited a homeless woman into his home for shelter, then tried to kill her with a machete when she rebuffed his sexual advances. So Crispino invited the woman to stay in his home, the Humboldt Park neighborhood, and then he made sexual advances at her, rebuffed him, and the woman told Crispino that she was leaving, but he emerged from his bedroom with a machete and swung it at her face, cutting her chin. Then he swung it at her face again. The woman raised her arm in self-defense, and if somebody's coming at you with a blade, you don't really want to raise your arms. If you can avoid it, you don't want to use your arms to defend yourself from the blade. It's counterintuitive. I know your instincts are going to be to put your hands up and defend yourself from that blade. But if you can, the best thing to do is duck, or kind of lean your head back out of the path of the blade if you can, without raising your hands. The reason I say that, one of the worst spots that you can get cut is in the wrists. Okay, you get caught in the wrists, and if you don't get that tourniqueted immediately, you can bleed out very fast from that and die. Your hands are not a good way to protect yourself from a blade. So anyways, the blade did strike her wrist, and it caused a wound that bled so profusely her life was in danger. And officials said that Crispino told the woman that he did not care if she bled out, and threatened to cut her head off if she moved. The woman begged Crispino to call 911, and he eventually did. So the machete had severed ligaments and muscles in the woman's arm that caused bone damage. Calling 911 might have been what saved him in this case from getting a way stricter sentence. But Crispino has never been convicted of a felony, but the damage to the woman's arm would need multiple surgeries to repair the wounds. And his defense attorney, Crispino's defense attorney, said last year that he was on disability for a traumatic brain injury. So police never found the machete. So that's a piece that they would have needed probably to convict him of attempted murder. They don't have the machete. And the judge who heard the state's initial allegations against Crispino identified that as a weakness in the case. So that right there, okay. But prosecutors struck a plea deal with him, allowing him to plead guilty to aggravated battery causing great bodily harm in exchange for a 4-year sentence from the judge. And this is Judge James Obish. So Crispino's sentence will be reduced by 50% for good behavior, and by another 468 days for credits earned in Cook County Jail, according to court records. So his parole date has not been announced, so he may have to end up serving, from right now, only about 1 year for trying to kill a woman with a machete. So, it's the circumstances. The judge said that they didn't have the weapon, so that was a weakness in the case. If this had gone to trial, though, I don't know, man. I don't know. But several felonies were dropped in his plea deal, including attempted first-degree murder, robbery, and multiple counts of kidnapping and aggravated battery. So that is one sweet plea deal. The homeless are a very vulnerable population in Chicago, and a lot of people who are, supposedly trying to help them can't trust nobody. You have to be very, very cautious. I know a lot of homeless people, they don't even go to shelters. They prefer to crash at the airport, or just in the forest preserve or something, because people around them, not the people that work at the shelter, but just the other guys in the shelter and stuff, they're very careful about that. It's a very precarious situation if you're homeless. You're just kind of out there and very, very vulnerable. So you definitely got to be careful who you trust. Going into somebody's home, that's not something I would do, especially if you're a woman and a guy is inviting you into his home. I highly advise against doing that. I think the street is safer than that. I really do. Like, because, and especially if you're like an attractive woman, never take that offer. Never take that offer. It's better to just stay on the street. And I know that's bad, but I would take a shelter over that. As dangerous as some of the shelters might be, but for the women, honestly, I think the women's shelters are pretty decent. Now I know a lot of those are full, but I would crash at the airport. You can crash at the airport. There's parts of the airport where you can crash. It's considered public space. I would take that. People out there just on some bad time coming out, preying on that on the weak, really. So this happened right in the middle of a busy intersection. This was one of several stabbings that we had over the past week, man. A man was stabbed to death on a busy uptown street corner. This was on Saturday evening. And the assailant remains on the loose as far as the last update that I've heard. So passersby said the offender started beating up the victim right over by Wilson and Sheridan. And this is a spot that I've been passing a lot of videos, man. I don't have any footage, I don't think, in this video. But around 7:40 p.m., which is, right when there's a lot of people out, this took place on the sidewalk right adjacent to the McDonald's parking lot. And CPD surveillance camera recorded the attack. And a cop who reviewed the footage said that the attacker pulled a knife from a book bag or a backpack and then stabbed the victim. Police did not identify the victim, who suffered stab wounds to his chest and abdomen. So the officer who saw the surveillance footage said that the assailant was a black male who wore a black hat, a black t-shirt, and the black t-shirt had white writing on it. He had dark pants and white shoes. One witness said that he may have worn a White Sox hat, and he headed west on Wilson Avenue after the attack. So the stabbing unfolded just one day after a man was found stabbed to death on a baseball diamond about a half-mile away. A passerby found the 64-year-old with wounds to his neck and head on the baseball field over at 4400 North Marine Drive, so that's like Montrose and Marine Drive, at around 5:30 a.m. Police did not receive any calls about a fight or other incident at the location before the man's body was discovered. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office ruled the death a homicide on Saturday, so just use caution, guys, man, because if somebody's just randomly going around stabbing people. We had another crazy case up on the north side, man. So a convicted child sex offender was impersonating a doctor to access the children's wing of a Chicago hospital. His name is Christopher Chothan. He's 39. He's been required to register as a sex offender since he was convicted of abducting, restraining, and sexually abusing a 15-year-old in 2002. Now, at that time, he was only 17. So, they were almost the same age. It was still a heinous crime as far as the other elements of the crime. Now he's accused of using a fraudulent ID to access secure wings at the University of Chicago Hospital. His phony ID listed a physician's name, but it had his picture. The wings that he accessed is designated for kids, and several children were present when he was there. So the video apparently showed him in the children's wing on May 12th of 2022, but he's not accused of harming or making contact with any of the kids while he was on the premises. He must register as a sex offender for life, and so he's not done so since August of 2016. On top of those convictions, he was convicted of impersonating police in 2002, being a sex offender in a school zone in 2006, possessing a methamphetamine precursor in 2009, and intimidation in 2009. He's now charged with violating the Sex Offender Registry Act and presence in a children's hospital by a child sex offender. So the judge ordered him to pay a $50,000 bail deposit to go home on electronic monitoring. And she said that he is barred from having contact with anyone under 18 except his own child. So there's nothing to indicate that he had made any attempts to do anything to any of the kids in that wing of the hospital while he was there.